Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well and enjoying the beautiful weather that we have this weekend. In preparation for our Pasta Sunday class this week, which we are making broccoli and gavatelli, or Cavatelli, as a lot of people call it, we are going to be making our dough ahead of time because it does need a bit of time to sit and relax in order to properly make those shapes that we're going to be making for class. So because of that, I wanted to send this video out ahead of time and make sure that you all knew exactly how to put the dough together, and then that way when we start, we will be ready with our dough and then we can get right into it. So the dough really needs about an hour to sit on its own before we actually start working with it. So with that, class at 5 o'clock, probably start around 3:30 to make sure that your dough is ready for 5. So let's get started. What we're going to need to make this dough is very, very minimal, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Each region in Italy makes their pasta a little bit differently. Some use egg, some use bread flour, some use all-purpose flour, some use semolina, some use water. So in this particular case, we are just using flour. I'm using all-purpose, but you could use bread flour or semolina either as well. Room temperature water, and some fine salt. I also have a side of flour just to work with the dough in case it's a little too watery, and I also have a glass of water just in case it's a little too dry and I need to add or make any adjustments that I need. So to get started, we have 4 cups of flour, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and 1 teaspoon of fine salt. I also have a fork because we're going to be mixing the dough together with this. I have a bread scraper, or a dough scraper rather, that I'll use just in case, but because I don't think a lot of people have that, I'll try to just work with my hands and the fork. You could do this in a bowl, or you could do it on a work surface. I have a cutting board down that I'm going to be working on, so it's up to you. If you have the space to be able to put it down and not into a large bowl, that's great, but if you don't, that's okay too. So let's get started. We are going to take our 4 cups of flour and just put it onto our work surface. And once we put that there, we're gonna kind of just wanna shape it and make a well on the inside. So we're forming a little bit of a hole on the inside of the flour to allow for the water to go in. Now, one thing we want to make sure is that the water doesn't overflow, so we're going to pour this water in slowly at a time so that it starts to combine, and then continue to add it in, as well as the salt with the water. So we have our well here, and we're going to slowly start to add in our water. Probably going to add about half of that, 1.5 cups, and then I'm going to add my whole amount of salt right now, right into the well of water. And I'm going to take my fork, and I'm going to start to slowly incorporate the flour on top into the water. Now we want to make sure that the water still stays within, so be very gentle with the amount that you're dropping in there. And then once you kind of have the whole part covered on the top, I like to just start to go into the center and start moving it around into a circle until it all starts to incorporate. And I'm pushing in the flour on the sides into the center of the well to allow for that flour to get in there and make sure that the water doesn't spill out. So I'm still just slowly incorporating. And now that I've got a decent amount in there, I'm going to add more of my water. If it does go over, it's totally fine, but we just want to try to keep it in the well if we can. So we are just going to continue to slowly incorporate. I like to start on the top so that it kind of gets the flour all on top of that water so that it doesn't fall over, and then I go into the center and I start to turn it in, mix it in. I have some little spots that are spewing over, it's totally fine. then I'm gonna make one little more small well and get this last bit of water in there. I have a little more left, so I'll work with that after. I'm putting it in from the top so that the water is getting covered, so that it's not completely falling out. Oh. And then we're mixing. It's pretty much gonna seem like a glob of some wet dough and some dry dough. That's okay, because we're gonna start to use our hands with it. Making one more little well, and I'm dropping this in, last of the water. And now I'm just gonna use my hands and start pushing the water, pushing the flour, into the water. You might have some that's falling out, that's okay, I do too. Totally fine. We're just gonna put it together, put the dough on top of each other until it starts to incorporate. Now you probably have a big mess of wet dough, dry dough all over. That's okay. Now we're gonna start to fold this dough together. So we're gonna take the flour and these little dry bits that are all over on the sides, I'm lifting them up and putting them on the top, and then I'm gonna fold the dough over. Taking these dry bits of flour, putting them on top, and then I'm folding the dough. So I've got some here in the back. I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm taking that flour, I'm putting it on top of this mound, and then you can fold in any direction. So now I'll fold from the side and just fold that on over. So I'll continue to take all this dry flour, put it on top into the center, and fold it over. You might need to lift up your dough to see what's underneath there. I have a bit of dry flour still, a lot. So I'm gonna kind of flatten out my dough, put that dry stuff in there, and just press it down and fold it over. And we're gonna continue to just incorporate everything. So I'll take my dry, put it on top, and fold it. And now everything's starting to kind of incorporate and come together. This is a very soft dough, and that is really nice when it comes to making shapes and things like that. So, but you do need to knead it in order to get that softness and that complete, texture where there's no ridges, there's no bumps. We want to make sure all the flour is in there. We don't want any dry bits of flour coming through. And again, I have my extra flour on the side and my water on the side. So if you do find that your dough seems to be a little too dry, add a little drop of water in there until it seems like it's getting better. Or if it's too wet, add some flour and mix it in so that it all comes together properly. So it's okay to have a mess on your hands. That's expected. You just put wet flour all over the place. Water and flour are sticky. It's okay. So now I have my work surface, which is pretty much covered with dusted flour, which is nice to work on. But if you ever feel like as you're kneading this, it gets too sticky, like I'm kind of have this bottom part that's not covered in flour, I'm just gonna take a little bit of my flour, sprinkle it on, and then continue to work. So right now what we're doing is we're kneading the dough to continue to make it softer, and we're gonna knead it for about 8 minutes. So you're gonna you can take your hand, your palm of your hand, put it into a fist and press it down on each side, all over, and then fold it. And then take your palms, press down all over, and then fold it. And you're just gonna continue to do that. It's a little tedious, and it seems like a lot, but in the end, it's a labor of love, And this is how you get your dough to be really nice and soft and workable. We're also really working the gluten in here and making sure that we're activating it properly. So the kneading is really activating this gluten from the flour. And that's another reason why we need to let this dough rest for so long, is because that gluten is really gonna give it the opportunity to rest, or the rest will give the gluten some time to be a little easier to work with. And that allows for the shapes to be made properly. If you make it too quickly, you're really not gonna have a pliable type of dough that allows for you to make a nice shape, whatever kind of shape you're making. And this dough recipe can be used for several different types of shapes. It kind of just depends on the shape and the region that they're from. But typically I'll use a semolina dough flour, instead of all-purpose flour in order to make those kinds of shapes when you're not using an egg. But today we'll focus on Cavatelli, and then we can master other ones along the way. Again, you're just kneading the dough and folding it up. So continue to do that for a bit. And don't forget to add water or flour as you're going. The texture or the consistency might change. That's okay. Okay, once you feel like your dough is soft and firm and just, looks really nicely textured, something like this, you're gonna want to cover it so that it doesn't dry out at all. So you wanna take some plastic wrap. If you don't have it, take a towel and cover it completely. It's best to put it into a bowl and then take the towel and cover that bowl so that there's no air pockets. So we're just gonna nicely seal this. Until we have our dough. And once we are ready to go, in 1 hour from now, we will start to make these shapes. So I'm really excited to get started with you guys on this. I hope you're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be lots of fun, lots of nice tastes and flavors. And once you master this, you can pretty much do anything with pasta. So I'll see you soon.